and welcome to the launch of Daddy Issues, How to Detangle Ourselves from the Sins of Our Fathers. I am your Mistress of Ceremonies, Miss Jessica Van, and I am super excited to be here with you guys tonight. Tonight is all about having a good time as we celebrate the first book from author and my best friend, Miss Christian Jackson. This is a major accomplishment, guys, and we are excited to share it with you today. If you are watching live, you have a wonderful opportunity to win a gift with your purchase today of your book, Daddy Issues, How to Detangle Ourselves from the Sins of Our Fathers. How to Detangle from the Sins of Our Fathers, and the workbook. Guys, I am so happy to share this with you. And although we cannot be together physically, we are about to have a virtual celebration. Down below, you'll see our ticker, and it will tell you exactly where to get your daddy issues. Go to couchwithchristian.com, and you can order Daddy Issues, How to Detangle from the Sins of Our Fathers in your workbook today. Without any further ado, let's bring on authoress Christian Jackson.
Woo!
Hey, I'm so excited.
I'm here. I'm so excited.
How are you feeling?
I am feeling great. Honestly, so excited that the day has come and that
you look amazing.
Thank you. It's been so much work. I'm just ready to rest, but I'm so excited for y'all. Hey, Afton, I see you.
I see it. I know. Like, So this is the day of rest. This is the day of celebration for you.
Yes. You know how when you first had your baby and you just say, you push him out and you're like, oh, yes.
And this is
how I feel. Oh, you guys. Hey, Mommy. Hey, Crystal. Hey, Taylor.
I love it. For those of you who are just entering, we are talking with the authoress herself, Miss Christian Jackson, about her first ever book that is launching today. Daddy Issues, How to Detangle from the Sins of Our Fathers.
Mm-hmm.
This is the birthday, right?
It is. It's a birthday.
So, I got you here. I got to ask you questions, right?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's go.
Just tell the people they have been waiting to find out. How did you come up with this title and the tagline, which is amazing?
Yes. So, hey, you guys, I'm Christian. I'm excited to be here. Thank you guys for coming. I came up with the title because it was something that's been on my heart for a long time to write a book in the first place. And so after years and years of loving, reading and writing and being that nerdy kid that, when your grandma tell you stay inside or go out the house.
You had the flashlight at bedtime?
Yeah. I was like, oh, I love reading. So that was me. I love to read. I love to write. It's always been a thing. And so I knew I wanted to write a book, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know the material. I didn't know what I was going to write. I didn't know who I was going to write about or what. I didn't know anything until I had my training as a licensed therapist. So you guys may or may not know I'm a licensed mental health counselor. And I knew that it would kind of be in the field of helping people. I knew that was going to be a thing. And then in my personal life, hey, Patience, I see you, girl. In my personal life, I had started to have this strange shift in my life and the relationship with my dad. And so unfortunately, we have had a really difficult go of things since I was about 19, 20 years old, kind of an off and on thing where we've had a really difficult relationship all these years. And so that's been on my heart for a while to really even heal that piece. And I didn't think it would come out in a book, but a lot of the work that I do with women who are mostly my caseload, I started to see a theme of stuff. And as a therapist yourself, I know you probably treat a lot of women too.
Yes.
And there's a certain, certain niche that we have, a certain kind of pattern that we see with the people that we treat. So I started to see, issues with abandonment, insecurities. I started to see a lot of, self-esteem issues. You have depression, you have anxiety. And as you know, as a therapist, we have this biopsychosocial assessment, right? That's when we, as therapists,
we get all in your business.
We get all in your
fancy way of saying getting all in your business. Okay.
All your history about how your history with mental and physical and spiritual and emotional health, how that kind of comes to be, right? Hey, Tyler, I see you, girl. So as I'm doing these assessments, I really take a lot of time on the family of origin piece. Family of origin meaning, these are the people that actually raised you, your village, as we call them. And so I started to see a pattern with the depression, anxiety, abandonment of all these things where women were not having really good relationships with their fathers. And so I saw a spectrum of people who had good relationships with their dads to not having a relationship at all, whether that be from death or incarceration or just estrangement. And so all those seem to be triggers of the symptoms that I saw. And so I started to say, okay, well, I'm going to treat these women. Hey, Andrea, Dr. Fleming, I love you. That's my soror.
Yes.
Yes. Hey. So as I started to see these themes, and I'm like, yo, okay, this is what it is. I am going to help these women through their problems. And the more that I dug and got all up in their business, as you said so eloquently, I'm like, oh, this is touching my stuff, sis. Like, you're ever in a session with the client, you're like, we could be friends, we can go out for tea. You know what I'm saying? And then we can talk about
me.
It's you and me, So I had that thought.
Yeah, and what's interesting, like, so you touch on my next question about the inspiration. So it sounds like this was something deeply personal for you and something that you were seeing. And I wonder if, as you're seeing this in clients, did your clients even know that this was a thing that they were dealing with?
No, I actually talk about that in my book. Like, if you throw the word daddy issues out, then they're like,
that's a dagger. It's a dagger.
It's a bad word, I'm not calling you out your name, sis. I'm just calling it what it is, So, that was one of the things that I saw. Like, I would start, of course, as therapists, we have to write our notes after a session, And so we're basically writing these stories. Like, every time that I would get a note and I would say, this is what I noticed. And I've always liked to write. So my conceptualizations are very thorough.
Yes.
So I'd be writing their stories. And then, of course, eventually we start the treatment. And I'm like, well, we're going to do this ABC model, which is in the book. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I've worked through all this stuff. And then because I was triggered, I went to go and do my own therapy. And I mentioned in the book, yes, it's necessary. Every therapist, I believe, needs a therapist. And so I went to therapy. I did my work. And everything that I'm throwing out in the book are things that I've tried, things that I've suggested, and things that my clients, as a client myself, my therapist would say, hey, write a letter to your dad. And let me tell you something, that session wrecked me, okay?
I can only imagine. So after talking about the book, let's talk a little bit about how the book is structured.
Okay.
Just walk us through it. What are we going to see when we're diving into daddy issues? And I am so rude. I didn't invite you to partake of your cocktail as you share. And I hope all of our viewers, I hope you have something to enjoy as you are getting exclusive content right now, okay?
I'm going to take the last little swig after my interview, but I hope you guys all drink responsibly. But yeah, the book is structured such that you are walking through a therapy session, kind of. So it was actually my editor, Amelia Wright, who I hope pops in here. She actually suggested, she was like, Christian, this is some heavy stuff. You need to give people like a speed bump kind of thing, right? And so, I'm already writing these notes about the clients that I'm seeing. And so I'm basically already putting a manual together as I'm writing my notes. And so I'm like, the book pretty much wrote itself. Hey, Jackie, my auntie's in here. So, hey, Jessica, I see you, my old childhood friend. So I was writing a manual basically as I was putting the whole book together. You know what I'm saying? So like the book is structured such that I lay the foundation for you. I tell you what daddy issues are. So I basically made up a diagnosis. And, because we don't see daddy issues in the DSM-5, which is the book that we use to diagnose clients, I sprinkled a little something together. So what you'll find in the beginning is a diagnosis that I call daddy issues, plain and simple. And it is a combination of reactive attachment disorder, which is a diagnosis that a lot of troubled teens, and I hate that term, but I just want you to know what I'm talking about, get when they have trouble bonding or relating to an authority figure, whether that be their parent or a teacher or whatever it may be. A lot of kids who are in the system, the foster care system, unfortunately get slapped, with that I'm going to stay off my soapbox. But I use that because there's a bonding piece when we're talking about daddy issues. And then I also sprinkled in a little bit of separation anxiety. So if you couple those things together, of course, along with some of the symptoms of depression and anxiety, I came up with daddy issues.
And it makes a lot of sense to use those two. It really does. Mm-hmm. My thing is, like, as a therapist, I know that you have these V codes, and then you have, like, and so you have some V codes that talk about relationships. I love the diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And I actually read Daddy Issues diagnosis before I found out the process for getting it into the book. So what you thinking about pushing that to the American Psychiatric Association?
I'm here to go to the board, figure it out. You know what I'm saying? I have one of my mentors, Dr. Fleming, in here. I know she got some pulls someplace. But, it's really one of those things where, a whole bunch of white dudes wrote the DSM.
Right. Oh,
why couldn't I go in and just, drop something in here? This is just something that I think that we need to bring attention to. So,
absolutely.
As we are talking about just the development of the book and what I, how I came up with the diagnosis, you get that in the beginning of the book. I tell you what daddy issues are. Mm-hmm. And then in the rest of that chapter, which I gave out free a long time ago, but I developed archetypes. Like, and you'll hear this, I guess, in the panel, but there are daddy issues on a spectrum. Mm-hmm. So my best friend who's producing in the back, she told me, she was like, yo, I have a good relationship with my dad. I love you and I want to support your book, but how do I relate to that? Right. So I talk about that in the book, and I really paint the picture of, like, even if you're a daddy's girl and you love your dad, you have a great relationship, how that can still manifest into those symptoms of daddy issues. So I lay that foundation. In the beginning, I'm also talking about attachment styles, which is so important. And one of my business partners and really good friends, Narumi Amador, she loves attachment work. And so it really was, I learned a lot from her about attachment, and basically that theory that talks about how, what gets in the way of us really bonding with our caregivers, right, our attachment styles. And so I talk about that and I lay that out for you. And because of my own personal story with me kind of overcoming my daddy issues in spiritual, I talk about your heavenly father versus your earthly father,
which I'm excited to read.
Yes, because I know you're on your spiritual walk, like you're awakening and all, ascending in all kind of ways.
Exactly.
So, I wrote a whole chapter on that. So, I'm really setting up the scene of what daddy issues is before I dive into how daddy issues affects marriage, dating, friendships, even your job. So I'm really laying it out for you once you know what daddy issues are. But in between every chapter, there's a self-care check-in. So like my editor, she told me, she was like, you need to give them people a speed bump. Yes. Then she's like, yo, this is a lot. It's heavy. I need you to slow it down for me. So in between each chapter, you guys will find self-care check-in questions where you get to reflect on the previous chapter that you just read. And not only that, ladies, you will also get activities so that you can really apply what you learn from your self-care
practice. Oh my gosh. So like you were saying, there's really not a lot out there about daddy issues. So where did you find your supporting materials? I know you created the diagnosis using the DSM. Is most of your supporting material from your own experience, or where did you draw that?
Yeah, so my material, of course, is from my experience. And so being super vulnerable, and I made the decision to share what the turning point was for me and my dad having a great relationship, and me being a daddy's girl and loving him, and I still do, to the turning point in our relationship when I was an adult. And where that went wrong, if you could say that. So I drew a lot from that. So I do share that, and I need to say from the beginning that this is not a book to bash my dad. This is not a book to bash Black men, because my dad happens to be a Black man. He's very smart and very educated and all those things. But my dad is a child of trauma, and that's just what comes from it. So if we're just thinking about what I'm pulling from empathy, because I understand what my dad has gone through. And my auntie's in here. She was raised with him, and she's been in the house with him. And so she knows what that difficult dynamic was in the home with my parents or with my parents, my father and like her sisters and my grandmother. So I'm pulling from that because, and I know you're going to ask me this, but what I really want people to get from the book is that we are here to break cycles.
Yes.
That is the point of the book. That is the entire point. Because while you're learning about what family of origin is, what it means to you and your specific tribe, then I want you to know that you don't have to be defined by the trauma that you have been through. Right. And that is so important, so that's why the tagline is how to detangle from the sins of our fathers, because we're talking about family. We're talking about generations past. So even past my own father and all the different men before him, all the women before him, all of our past generations, our ancestors, if you will, there have been mistakes that have been made. I'm trying not to screw my kids up. You know what I mean?
Right. And I love that you say that, because as you're talking about breaking cycles, I read a quote somewhere that by healing ourselves, we're healing the ancestors.
Yes.
And we are almost, we're teaching those who raised us that it's not too late. If a lot of our parents are children of trauma and they don't know that we know.
Yes.
And we're offering them, we're holding space for them to be able to heal themselves. And so, since you stole my question, let me ask you another one.
Well,
how has this book helped you? And how has writing it helped you to be a better wife, mother, clinician, all the stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question, and an unplanned question. I got to think about it.
Yeah, keep your toes.
Yeah. That's how life works. But I think that it has really helped me to empathize with my dad, because we're not speaking right now, and I really, really hope and I continuously pray that we will reconcile, on the terms that are comfortable for both me and him. Right? It needs to involve both of us. But I really learned the importance of understanding what trauma really does for someone, because you can't give what you didn't learn or what you didn't receive. So I've learned that before I would demand, like, my dad's going to apologize to me and blah, blah, blah. But if he didn't learn how to do that and his guard is up, then that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? Just be okay with his healing process. So it really helps me to understand how trauma works. And I know that clinically, but we have to connect certain dots. You know what I'm saying? So I'm excited to have that insight and actually in a personal way apply that, so that if my son is freaking out, my 3-year-old, Amari.
That's my baby.
Yeah, you're an animal. Tina too, who's gonna be coming on here too. They just connect for some reason.
Yes.
So he is just off the wall sometimes emotionally. And our first son, Carter, was just not like that. Like, he's super chill. So I have to learn how to tap in and make sure that I'm okay with him responding in such an emotional way. And so as a mother, it helps me to calm down and say, okay, instead of saying actually calm down, as a mother, I'm like, okay, let's breathe, because I understand you're going through something. Like, I have to tell you how to calm down. So a wife, and you'll read this in the book because of the DI and marriage chapter, which we're actually going to read a little bit tonight. There is a chance for me to, I'm still working on it because I'm still super stubborn, and my husband's watching in the back. So I know that he knows this, but I think as a wife, it's understand, like, Mr. Tony knows how to be with me, and really through him, I'm learning how to pace myself with certain things. So, I've been able to kind of see the other side of stuff, like watching my parents' marriage and how crappy that was. Sorry, Mom, I know you're here, but that shouldn't probably not have happened. But I'm having a chance to recreate what I want my family to look like. So I'm excited. I mean, it's a really good journey, and it's helping me to grow and learn based on what I've already seen.
I love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, guys, we have a giveaway, and the first viewer to order their copy of Daddy Issues in the workbook will receive a Daddy Issues tote that I tried to bribe Christian for. She didn't give in, but make sure that you guys get your orders in today, guys. This is the official launch. So if you're just joining us, we are talking all about Daddy Issues today. Now, Christian, I gotta kick you out because I want to bring the panel in so we could talk a little bit about Daddy Issues and really dive in. So, guys, I have the honor of bringing on 3 wonderful mental health experts. And being a therapist myself, I know how hard we work for all of these letters. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves in an effort to, put some respect on their name and their alphabet soup behind their name. I'm going to let these wonderful ladies introduce themselves as we dive into Daddy Issues, How to Detangle from the Sins of Our Fathers. Welcome, ladies.
Hey. Welcome.
So,
thank you.
I just wanted to let you introduce yourself and explain a little bit about what you do.
Well, I guess I'll go first. My name is Cheryl. Ladies, y'all look so lovely. Oh, hey, y'all. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapy associate here in Columbia, South Carolina, and I'm the owner of Grace to Heal Counseling Services downtown. I deal with a lot of family and couples counseling at the moment. It seems to be what I get as far as referrals, but in the past, I've also done work with sexual trauma and PTSD in children.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go next. Hi, you guys. My name is Ari Foster, and I am a licensed social worker and mental health therapist. And for the past 10 years or so, I've been working directly with underserved communities, at-risk youth, and survivors of sexual assault and abuse.
And my name is Tina Phillips, and I am a licensed independent social worker of clinical practice, and I'm also a social work supervisor. And I own No Shame Counseling, Reiki, and Consultation. I am also the co-owner of JP Training that provides training to other mental health professionals. And I primarily work with trauma survivors and help people to learn to be kind to themselves and walk on their best journey for their lives.
Absolutely. So Christian did mention my spiritual journey, and Tina has been instrumental in that, guys. So if you've never tried Reiki, just putting that out there. Ladies, thank you so much for being here. I want to open up with asking you guys, what do you think are some takeaways that the reader will have from reading Daddy Issues? I'm going to start with Ari.
Yes, so one of the biggest takeaways for me, even personally reading it, and what I hope readers will get out of the book is that this doesn't just have to be a personal, internal conversation. Christian did such a great job of organizing the content, the layout of it, the structure, the stories that are kind of mixed in that really tug on your own. It gives you a space to connect with it and a space to really be honest with yourself about how these issues might have manifested in your life. I encourage anybody who reads the book to really take your time, definitely take care of yourself, give space for reflection, but also be encouraged to share this with the people who are also part of your life who might be affected by it. It's great for conversations. I've used it personally in talking with my husband about things that I've noticed and just patterns in relationships and conflict. And again, it's really good at giving you the language to do that in a way that doesn't bring shame or doesn't bring labels, because we said this time and time again, this is not about a label. It's not about being identified by daddy issues, but it's about being honest and owning your story and doing something different with your legacy. You want something different, right? We don't want to rehash the same things over and over again. So this is a great chance to take that step forward and do something different with your relationships.
I love that. Does anyone comment on that?
Yeah, I love what Ari was saying about doing something different with your legacy. I think that was really, like the way you said that was just beautiful. I think that that's a big piece of what I got from this as well. And I think that another piece that is highlighted for me is that sometimes it's hard to take yourself out of the expert shoes and put yourself in a place where the book does apply to you, or books like this apply to you. And so I remember the first chapter I read, and I completely breezed past the self-care check-in. And I got part two, like the second part and the third chapter, and in there they were starting to describe the different pieces of the spectrum. And I was like, let me go back, because clearly I wasn't ready. I need to go back and process this a little bit. And so I would encourage anybody who's an expert in the field to definitely do the check-ins. They're there for a reason. They're not just, they are a speed bump, but we shouldn't go over the speed bump.
Right. And I live in a neighborhood where people totally ignore speed bumps. So, and that, you guys both bring up a really good point. I was going to ask, what do you think about these self-care check-ins and how that can really help somebody to sit and digest what Christian is sharing? Tina?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that the check-ins are really a time for you to take that look into what's going on in you, what was sparked in you. One of the things that I typically say, and I have framed here in my office, is let me see what I say so I know what I think. And so a lot of times, if we are not externalizing our experience, if we're not externalizing what we just processed or read, a lot of times we don't even know. And so those check-ins are really a time for you to be able to write down, oh, I didn't even realize that's what I was thinking. I didn't even realize that's what I was feeling or experiencing, or that's what things were like for me back then, or that I do fall on this spectrum over here and over here. Because there was a lot of intersectionality that I found in looking through the book and in looking at like the different subtypes of daddy issues. And so the self-care check-ins are so important. Plus, it gives you a break. It gives you a time. It reminds you to breathe, which a lot of times we forget to do.
Right.
So it reminds you to breathe. It reminds you to take that time for yourself. I'm a speed reader, and I typically tend to fly through books that are really good. And this was a really good book, but it was triggering for me on some parts to where I had to break it up and I had to read it in 2 sections. I did read it over 2 days because it is that good. Like I had read it over 2 days, but like there was a point where I was like, ooh, okay. I did one of those self-care check-ins and I was like, you know what I need to do? I need to take a break. I need to go outside and walk, and I need to go outside and get grounded, and be barefoot in the grass. So that's what I did. So those self-care check-ins to me are everything. I am absolutely incorporating this book and the workbook into my work professionally, but I am also using it personally. So it's wonderful.
Right. Yeah. And Cheryl, your thought on it? I apologize.
No, you're totally fine because I lost that thought, but I will start a new thought. I was going to say about the workbook. I'm super psyched to hear that there is one. I think when we did our just kind of checking in and talking about the panel starting or being a thing, was my first time knowing that there was a workbook. And I was like, you mean there's more? What? And so I'm super excited because I immediately thought of people that I wanted to do this workbook with me. I immediately thought of people that I thought would benefit from that. As far as the self-check-ins go, I think that the space that they allow to just process, like you were saying, Tina, process what you read, but also just kind of figure out or give you space to kind of figure out why did that hit you the way that it did. So I remember one of the check-ins that I did, I definitely like, why did that hurt my feelings? But why? It shouldn't hurt my feelings. It was just words on the page and it was accurate, but I was hurt. And it actually had gotten me to a point where I didn't want to finish the book. Right. Because if that was true, what else will I find in here that's true? Ooh. And I don't know if I'm ready for all of those things at the same time.
Yes. So just because it's true doesn't mean we're ready to hear it.
Exactly.
Because we might already know it's true, but we're just going to pack that away.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that. We just opened a whole new box of stuff right now, and I just didn't know. But I think that knowing those things about yourself help you become a better person, help you become a greater clinician, help you become a greater friend, a greater woman. And when you said something earlier about ancestors and about how we can break. Hold on, I want to give it justice. I wrote it down. Hold on. By healing ourselves, we're healing our ancestors. I love that. And I think that it's imperative for us to know, especially as Black women, for us to know these things about ourselves because we have the power to break these cycles that are just generational for our culture. And if we don't get brave, for lack of better words, and do that, then our next generation will have no hope.
Amen. And that's a really good segue into the next question. This one's going to go to Tina first, but what would you say to women who may not identify with the term daddy issues or don't want to embrace that as a label?
I would definitely encourage them to read the book. I will say that I was a little nervous, kind of like Cheryl, about diving in up front because I was like, you know what? I'm a strong believer that you shouldn't buy anything from anybody who.
We seem to be having a little bit of technical difficulty, folks, but that is okay. We're going to keep the party going. For those of you who are just joining us, we are talking about daddy issues, how to detangle from the sins of our father. This is the first book from authoress Christian Jackson. We had our panel on and we are going to just keep rolling through. So the question that I just asked, and you and I can kind of riff on this, Cheryl, is how would we address women who may not identify with the term daddy issues and they don't want to accept that as a label? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that I am she. Hello. So I think that, like I was saying before, I think that's something that I had issues with trying to figure out where I fit on that spectrum, and or if I even fit on the spectrum. I think that you said it very perfectly earlier when you were saying that's sort of like a dagger if you don't see that as your truth. Because I grew up as a daddy's girl. I'm actually a daddy's girl now, and he is like the foundation of who I am. Hi, everybody. What happened? Oh no. Okay. So, so to think of that as being an issue, I think that was the word that kind of like was triggering the issue piece.
Right.
But then thinking about my own personal journey, and I joke about this sometimes, but I was like, I think that that might be why I'm single now, because of that daddy's girl issue, and the fact that and we talked about this the other day when I was out with my dad, actually, that I will just approach anyone in the way that I've like been trained or grown to know how to approach people. So like we'll be out together. We were out at the store earlier today, and I just came up to a guy and just started talking. And I wasn't talking down to him per se, but I had questions and I expected answers, and I expected you to know the answers because you work here and this is your job.
Right.
And I immediately like got a little snarky. And my dad was like, "This might be why you're single." And I was like, "Well, thinking about it, when I come to you with answers like that I expect answers to, you know." And so that expectation is high. And when I talk to people who can meet that expectation, I'm like, no.
It's interesting that for you, it was the issues word that was triggering, right? Because we take on words that are really kind of neutral, and we associate these terms. So welcome back, Tina. But we associate good or bad. And it's interesting that some people hear issues and it's automatically a negative thing, because you could have good issues. Like what I hear from you is your dad instilled you with enough confidence that I want to ask a question and I think you should know the answer, and that happens sometimes. But Tina, do you happen to remember where you were, or would you like to move forward?
I think what I was just saying is that basically, as for anybody, I don't think that you should buy something from someone who doesn't use their own product. And so as a therapist and clinician, one of the things that I definitely believe in is therapy. And so that means that I go to therapy, right? Shout out Dr. Ward. He's
right.
And so when Christian first shared the book with me, I was like, I don't really, I don't need to add anything else on top of what I'm already like processing, what I'm already trying to work through. And I was like, I had a dad, and, my dad lived in my house. And a lot of times, actually, it was something that I got teased about a lot growing up. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, what does this really mean? But then when I got to college, I had a lot of friends who were jealous because I had a dad. And they would always say, well, you're lucky because you had a dad. But I was like, I have a dad, but my dad was emotionally unavailable. And so sometimes it was very difficult growing up that way, because if you ever had someone who is personally in your space, but still does not see you, it is very damaging. And so I was like, I don't want to read this book. But when I got into the book, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be in regard to what daddy issues are. And so society has taken that term and has kind of sullied it. We've kind of drug it through the mud. And a lot of times it's used as an insult, especially towards Black women, to say, you got a problem because you didn't have a dad. And so I would encourage women, read this book, because even if you had a dad and he was the best dad in the world, like, this book is about you. If you had a dad who was not present, this book is about you. If you had a dad who was in and out, it's about you. If you had a dad who only provided financially but did not take care of those emotional needs, which that's a lot of our issue, this book is also about you and for you. And it's not coming from a standpoint of something is wrong with you, but it's coming from a standpoint of, let's celebrate where you are as a result of who your dad is. Because the other thing I always tell my clients is, we are made up of 3 parts: our moms, our dads, and our experiences. That's what makes us us. And so in this book, all we're doing is focusing on 1/3 of who we are. And we can't deny that. So trying to just say, I'm only going to process my experiences, that is not, you're not getting to the heart of the problem. You're not getting to the heart of the issue and really processing everything. you've got to address all three parts. So I'm hoping that we get a little mommy issues book after the daddy issues. So that we can process that part next. But absolutely, this book is for everybody, and it's for every therapist. You need to have this in your practice, and every woman, and even men, you need to read this book.
Yes.
Because it will help you understand women a lot more, and because I relate to a man the same way I related to my father, and my expectations are the same for a man as they are that I had of my father.
Yes,
so
and men have daddy issues as well, you know. So, you know, this is, I guess we've probably all been like Christian mommy issues when we get on that. But Ari, would you like to share any thoughts on that?
On the daddy issues?
Yes, for those who might not be able to relate to that label.
Yeah, so again, with the intention of reading this book and not going in thinking that this is going to label me and this is something that's going to define who I am as a person. Understanding that, again, you'll really get a chance to reflect on things that you might have ignored or avoided or tried to separate yourself from. And when you start to have those conversations, not only with yourself, but with loved ones, with people close to you, you do feel clarity. You do feel understood. And understanding is something we celebrated a lot interpersonally. Like, I love when somebody can understand me. I feel like I'm being heard and seen. But imagine what it's like to really hear and see yourself. Ooh. Like, there are parts of yourself that have been struggling, things that like
make me cry.
Yeah, you would notice somebody mentioned before, you're affected by something and you feel it, you're aware that something's wrong, but you don't know where it's coming from, why. This book really helps you do that. So again, I'm encouraging people to have their hearts and minds wide open while they're reading this, and I'm looking forward to a journey of that. So that sometimes that connection is uncomfortable initially. It's like, ooh, where did this come from? I didn't even know that this was a thing for me, like Cheryl mentioned before. But again, just give yourself some time and some space for that, and it'll really be worth it.
So as you guys may have heard me say to Christian, it's my job to keep you on your toes. So this next question is gonna kind of be like a rapid fire, right? We're gonna talk about the daddy issues diagnosis. Think of one of the most prevalent symptoms of daddy issues that you see, and maybe one way that you address that for your client. So whoever would like to go first. I won't put anybody on the spot since I'm making it rapid fire, but the most prevalent daddy issue symptom you see and how you address it in your practice. All right, I'm gonna call on somebody.
I'll go.
Go ahead. We all going.
Go for it.
The first thing that came to my mind was just difficulty trusting yourself. So whether it's like intuition or decisions that you have to make, how you feel about something and really wrestling with it, questioning it, going back and forth about it, and doubting yourself as a symptom. With this one, I feel like there's a therapy model that is very popular in helping people clarify their personal values. So what's important to them, what they're looking for, what their goals are in life and relationships and all the different domains. And I think bringing in that conversation is very important, because a lot of times when we're questioning ourselves and how we see things, it's because there's a lot of mud from expectations, a lot of mud from experiences that we've been in, trauma, conflict, relationships. So let's get back down to what's important to you, what really matters to you, what really makes up who you are as a person, and connect that to the decision making. And through that, you'll find, especially for me, just more self-compassion in making those decisions. And even the ones that you do have a hard time with, you know why it's harder, why you need to take a little bit more time and be a little bit more cautious, and that it's okay. It's not about like always knowing the right thing and what to do and always being on top of things all the time, but really giving yourself grace. Cheryl, she can talk so much about that, but really giving yourself grace to explore yourself as you grow and as you change, and honor those values for what they are.
Absolutely. Well, Cheryl, you were mentioned, so let's just go with it.
Since she brought it up, I think that the grace piece, and she knew I was going to go there. But yes, grace, definitely, because the most prevalent symptoms that I see, and I'm not sure if this was something that kind of stuck out to me or if I remember reading it and exactly where, but the denial piece. And I'm pretty sure I'm telling on myself at this point, but the denial that there is an issue. denial that the issue is something that is still causing you pain. A lot of us, when we have our daddy issues, we're not 6. Like, all of us are over 20 years old. And so daddy issues shouldn't be, quote, shouldn't be something that is bothering us or something that is keeping us back. And so when you find out that that's piece of a problem or piece of the root of a problem, the denial that that's something that you're still struggling with, even though you've worked so hard to achieve these things. And I can speak from personal experience. When I read the book and I was like, no, but I'm a therapist. Like, I'm a whole therapist out here. I have bills. I don't have any kids, but I have a dog. He's still alive. Like, my plant is still alive. Like, I'm able to like cultivate things out here.
I'm keeping people alive.
Yeah, I'm keeping people alive. I'm eating 3 times a day, all things. So like, I should be able to be fine. But again, that should be. And I think that speaks to something that Tina was saying earlier about that societal view, that social construction of what daddy issue is, and being so far removed from that. Because if we have ourselves in that little section, then we won't give ourselves all the grace that we're due. We won't give ourselves the grace to acknowledge or honor, like Ari said before, honor the parts of ourselves that is just trying the best that we can, right? And trying to move forward. And it's still having to struggle with this, but understanding that the problem, and I think that's a big piece of it, is that people internalize problems, right? So when you think of daddy issues, it's not someone who, like, you think of yourself as the issue and not someone who is dealing with an issue. And I think that's a big piece that I've seen with the clients that I work with.
I like that. Miss Tina.
I would definitely say one of the things that stuck out to me a lot is the emotional responses. And a lot of times what I see in my practice is I'll be talking to someone and I'm like, oh, you did that. Oh, okay. And then it's like, and then they'll tell me something incredibly like devastating that happened. And I'm like, well, how did you respond to that? I mean, I got up and went to work. And I'm going, now there's so much incongruence, which basically means things aren't matching up. Your experience and your expression or your reaction to that don't match. And a lot of times what happens is there's that internal kind of that scale system gets really off balance a lot of times when you have the daddy issues, which, if we're honest, daddy issues is another form of trauma.
Yes.
And so what happens is we overreact to things that are probably not that big, but for us they are, because of the compound trauma. And there's this defense that we have to pull, which goes back to security issues. And a lot of us as young girls, especially, we were supposed to look to our dads for security and safety. And so when oftentimes that was not met, or it did not exceed or meet our expectations, we felt unsafe. And so when we get back in a situation again where we feel like we're going to lose something, I feel like, I'm going to lose this relationship, or I'm going to lose this person, or I feel like you tried to get me and I'm going to get you back. I'll bust the windows out your car. All of these things, all of these sorts of things, these go back to the daddy issues. And so a lot of times what I'm doing is really helping women to kind of take a step back and really look at where the disconnect has happened. And there's a real brain and body disconnection for a lot of people. And so one of the biggest things that I do, even when I'm doing therapy, but also especially when I'm doing Reiki, is helping to get people back in balance and helping to reconnect people. So you have to reconnect with yourself. And really what has to happen is you have to develop a new scale system.
Yes.
A new internal scale, so that you can start saying, okay, this deserves this much of my energy and this does not. So that every time somebody says something or does something, we're not triggered to the gods, or we can't feel it at all. So that's one of the biggest things that stuck out to me, and it was excellent.
Yes. So how do we overcome it? How, if you're realizing, if someone is listening to this and they're realizing, okay, I may be on that spectrum, what is the first thing that they need to do to move forward through their daddy issues?
Acknowledge it.
Right.
You cannot change what you do not acknowledge. So you have to read the book and find yourself. And as you find yourself, you will find your strength. And for a lot of us, we do not know who we are because we've never really known our identity, because most of us have been doing things through the filter of trauma, through the filter of daddy issues. So most of us don't even know who we are. So first you have to acknowledge your issues, and then you go on a quest to find out, who am I really?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well,
that's definitely it. That's all. I can't add anything to that.
look, I could do this all day, but this ain't my thing. So I thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you, ladies. Guys, if you're just tuning in, you are going to have to catch the replay because this panel is everything, okay? All your questions are going to be answered about why you need this book. So head over to couchwithchristian.com and make sure that you get your workbook and your copy of Daddy Issues today, like right now. Open another screen. So, ladies, I just, again, want to thank you for being here. And I would like to announce that we have a winner of that beautiful tote bag. I may need to talk to this person personally to see if maybe they're willing to give it up. But Miss Jo KB has won the first tote bag. So talk to her. I'm going to bring Christian back on. And we're going to talk about a little something. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you. You guys have a good one. We appreciate it.
Yes. So, guys, like I said, if you are just tuning in, we are talking about daddy issues, how to detangle from the sins of our fathers, the first book by Miss Christian Jackson. Y'all almost went back and called her by her maiden name because that's how I know her, So welcome back, Christian. Good to see you. Were you listening? Were you eavesdropping on our conversation?
I was eating brownies.
Oh, okay.
So excuse me,
not a problem. Not at all. So now that I've got you back on here, how are you feeling as we're going through this?
I'm feeling so at peace. I mean, when I asked my friends / colleagues to do the panel, I already knew. Like, they had read the book for me. Can you read this book in a week and give me a review, please?
But really, Christian speak is like 48 hours because I want to know what you want to know. So I'm glad so they did that. They read the book for you, and amazing. Like, if I do say so myself, you got some bomb friends. I mean, So it looks like we're having another technical difficulty, but that's all good, guys. I see you guys in the comments, and I'm just going to start to read some of those. Dr. Fleming, as we mentioned, is our soror, and she says, great dialogue. This book will create a framework and offer our clients language to articulate their experiences while connecting to their emotions / behaviors. This is critical on the journey of processing and healing and breaking chains. And that is absolutely right. We have got to, like you said, give language to our experiences. Language is how we communicate both verbally and through our body language. And when people don't have the language for what is happening to them or what they are experiencing, it makes it more difficult to process those things. So I love it. And I'm sure that was on the top of Christian's list for doing this. But I'm seeing everybody. Thank you so much for supporting. Guys, if you have any questions, there we go. So got Christian back.
I'm back.
Let's see. So now we got our first winner.
Yes.
Is there another tote bag?
Not for you.
Why you had to do me like that? All right, I'll just go with what we have planned, guys. We're going to do another giveaway. And the second giveaway will be someone selected at random by our beautiful producer, who I definitely want to give a shout out to, Miss Michelle Brown back there.
Handling business. So Michelle, you.
She's keeping us moving. She is keeping us moving.
Yes.
Are we going to we don't want to do questions because I already read somebody's comments.
Yeah, we can keep it rolling and just let Michelle choose. She'll let us know again.
Okay. Michelle, you let us know when you have chosen someone and we will go from there. So Ms. Jackson, what would you like to discuss? The excerpt time? Am I getting off now?
Story time. Yes.
What one?
Daddy issues in marriage.
Oh, I can't wait. So, without further ado, it's going
to be just me?
Yes. The authoress, Christian Jackson, everybody.
Jessica, you want to know more about the workbook, my other friend Jessica. I will definitely get that, Jessica. I definitely will. So it's just me and you guys on the screen. It's story time. Michelle's going to take Jessica off. It's going to be us. I got to say, for anyone who is not on the Overcoming Daddy Issues Facebook group, that is something I created not only to promote the book, but also to give us a safe space to speak with one another, engage with one another, and make sure that we are supporting each other based on different random stuff that I put in the chat, encouraging words. I ask you guys on Self-Care Sunday what you're doing, all the fun things, so that we can make sure that we're keeping each other uplifted. So that's what the group is about. If you are interested, then Overcoming Daddy Issues Facebook group. Just search it. And if you're a woman identifying as a female, I will let you in. And it's been really great, respectful conversation. And so I put a poll in the Overcoming Daddy Issues group, and literally neck and neck, daddy issues and marriage and daddy issues and dating were like neck and neck. And like at the last second, we had daddy issues and marriage that won. So you guys wanted to hear from Daddy Issues and Marriage chapter. So I got to preface this by saying my husband is watching in the back with my kids. Hey, babe. And so I'm going to read some stuff that he hasn't necessarily heard yet. So I'm going to read from the chapter about how Tony and I have been together for 14 years altogether, right? And so we have been married 4 years. We just celebrated our 4-year anniversary a couple of weeks ago. And so I'm going to read from a chapter of Daddy Issues and Marriage. Without further ado. Okay, isn't this pretty, y'all? I love the cover of my book. Okay. Daddy Issues in Marriage, Chapter 15. June 11th, 2016 was the best day of my life. It was my wedding day. People judged me for marking this day as the best day ever because our son was already 5 years old by then. Even after our amazing little boy took his first steps, was finally potty trained, and doing well in kindergarten, I stand by the fact that my wedding day is my favorite of all. I had kissed so many frogs by then that I had little to no hope of having a husband one day. I was battling with insecurities that hindered progress in potentially decent relationships. But I had found the man of my dreams that I would be with forever, and I was so happy. And now I reached the day my life would change. I was going to be a wife. It's finally here, Michelle sang to me on June 11, 2016. She and my other close friends were there coming over to get their makeup done. I know, I can't believe it, and I'm so calm now, too, I replied. I spent the morning fantasizing about how Tony, that was a Freudian slip, how Tony would look at me when I walked down the aisle, and I knew he would be so sexy in his suit. It's a good sign that you're so at peace, Michelle said. It means that you know what you want, you guys are finally in a good place and on the same page. You're going to be a wife. By then, all my close friends except one were married. I struggled with being the only legally single person in the group, especially since Tony and I had dated for so much longer than everybody else. We were getting married in our 10th year dating anniversary. Remember when we broke up that one time and I drove down I-77 crying and looking for a cliff to drive off? Man, I was crazy, I said to my friend Crystal. Girl, I'm just glad you called me. I couldn't understand nothing you were saying. Tony, I can't over. Crystal joked. We could laugh about it then, but she was describing one of the most devastating times in my relationship with Tony. He told me he didn't want to be with me anymore after finding out that I'd entertained someone else during our long-distance relationship. I was so worried. It wasn't even the last time we broke up either. I said to my girls, while we drank wine and giggled at all the tea that was the Christian and Tony saga. My wedding day was a metaphor for many things. Security, because I was sure being married to the man I loved would only strengthen our family's foundation. It symbolized safety, because I always felt he protected me emotionally and physically. Acceptance, because he saw me, like really saw me and stayed. I felt extremely blessed that he wanted me and that I had learned to accept myself through his reinforcement. It took a long time for me to realize that I didn't need anyone else to complete me. Society conditions us to believe that we need other people to be whole, rather than the fact that we can be whole on our own, having done our work and built spiritual, emotional, and physical wealth. Those of us with DI symptoms have an interesting journey to being holistically whole. There are messages we have to undo, things we have to unsee, appropriate blame to set, and rational responsibility to take on. When we enter serious relationships, we being the women with daddy issues, especially intimate ones, it can bring out the little girl who learned insecurity from dealing with her father. We flounder trying to hold on to goodness we feel. These interactions bring forward things about ourselves we thought we buried deeply. Nurturing a close relationship means holding a mirror up to our ugliness and pulling out a microscope which means no traumas are left behind. So that's the beginning of that chapter. And after that, I give you the story of how Tony and I met, which is so cute. I have a version. I don't know what his version is, but I want to get into where that juxtaposition happens, where daddy issues meets being in marriage. So let's go to there. Okay. Are you guys still with me? I see you. Okay. Funny thing about marriage is that you take your old you with you if you're not careful. There was one part of me that married my husband because I was still trying to prove to my father that I could make something work that he couldn't, that I could still be loved when he didn't think Tony would stay with me, and that the man I was marrying was more than a suitable replacement for my dad and the things he couldn't and or wouldn't do for me. In fact, it was a step up. And call me the petty queen, but these are real, valid thoughts and feelings that informed the victory I felt my wedding day and well into the first year of our marriage. So since Tony and I were cohabitating for at least 5 years prior to getting married, I was determined to make the distinction between the boyfriend-girlfriend dynamic. I saw this as an opportunity to rid myself of my childish ways of my 20s. Turns out marriage is not a magic wand, folks, and those ways are still melting away. All my insecurities were heightened, and it was as if I was becoming even more sensitive to subtle changes as days charged on. So now I'm going to read a scene, the last part of this chapter that I'm going to share with you tonight, because you have to read the book or buy the book to read the rest. I'm going to set up a scene that demonstrates the exact way that daddy issues affected my marriage in this one way. So you fade in. Living room is quiet fall evening. The children are laid down for bed for the night. There are toys on the floor in the living room, and the house still smells of the crock pot meal the family had for dinner that evening, beef stew. Pan over to Christian and Tony, who are stretched on the couch, each on their own devices. Christian. So, babe, let me tell you about this crazy thing that happened at work. I'm almost embarrassed, you guys, to share the rest of this with you, but it's in print now, so what do? Before she can start her story, Tony raises his hand to give me a timeout signal. Tony, wait a minute, can I ask you a question? He pauses, then moves on when I give the hesitant affirmative nod. Tony, why you ain't clean the shower door or the windows? I mean, I ain't saying nothing all this time. Christian, I interrupt. Bloop, interject. What does it matter? You're always picking on me for something little, like things you don't notice I do around here that are so much more important. I'm done. You would not make me feel like I've done nothing when I take care of your kids. And I'm going to sit here and take this, Tony. Bloop. I am not your daddy, Christian. Now, let me just pause and let that sink in, because I know, and I've already been told, I am not the only person that's been told that when they're in an intimate relationship with their partner. So, silence fills the room as the last statement lingers. Christian starts to cry and leaves the scene. Tony looks after her with his chest heaving and his head shaking. Suddenly, Christian storms back into the room, crying and shaking herself. Christian, I can't believe you would say that. What does that have to do with me telling you that you always make me feel like I don't do enough? I work hard, Tony. You aren't going to take over like you are the perfect husband, because you're not. And when's the last time you cut the grass? See, I'm cutting unnecessary jabs. I didn't even have to go there. I'm sick of you telling me you have allergy. That's why you ain't doing it. So let me skip down to this part here where we really kind of break this down clinically. Because remember, this is autobiographical, but I'm giving you some of those clinical terms and things that I would share if I was in a session with my clients. So recall that the survivors of overwhelming, adverse mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual events survived because the way our brains are conditioned. We are wired for survival mode, where we respond to actual or perceived threats in certain ways. When we feel a reaction we like the most, we stick to it no matter how irrational it is. For example, if a threat, approaches, we will either square up, fight, or we'll run, flight. There's also the tendency to freeze, where our body thinks it's best to stay put with no reaction at all. This is how the human species is still here. It's always been survival of the fittest. Whether we experience a typical traumatic event, it is not a requirement for us to have learned certain ways to interact within our environments. All of our bears are different. Brene Brown, the shame researcher and absolute genius in the field of mental health, describes shame shields. This concept also applies to my response when threatened. If we maintain Brown's definition that shame means I am bad, internalizing it, okay, ladies? It hurts someone when people really see you. Thus, we respond in a way to protect us. So shameful. Moving forward, where we force ourselves into the space we fight, this lean in may be more harmful. We also move against, fight again, where we misplace blame and argue. That is all I'm going to give you guys tonight from the DI, Daddy Issues, and Marriage chapter. So I hope that you can see throughout the chapters in the book, I'm giving you guys content from my life, my experience, not only with my father and from childhood on up, but my relationships. You get to see my first love story when I was dating. You get to see me and Tony's relationship a little bit kind of budding from then, and how daddy issues, those insecurities, those issues with abandonment, the depression, the anxiety, just me being in that fight mode, being super defensive, interacts with my relationships. And that is a little piece of daddy issues in marriage. I hope you guys enjoy. I did get a question. That's good to see. I did get a question, Jessica, I guess before we move forward and kind of wrap things up. Jessica Merrick asked a little bit more about the workbook. So I guess I can do a little bit of that. If you can see here, and I'm going to try to show you guys, that was chapter 15. At the end of the chapter, you may see self-care check-ins, right? So I have questions, again, those speed bumps that come in between each chapter so that we can kind of slow things down, give you a chance to reflect. So the workbook is made up of those questions. It is not a replica of the book. You do get those exact questions and more room to write and actually take notes and dive in, but I've actually also added more questions to kind of expand your thinking, expand some of the things that you want to dive in with to really do the work. And so that book is written so that you have room to actually journal and write. You don't have lines everywhere because some of the note spaces you want, maybe people like to draw pictures to kind of get their thoughts out. We know that people are different learners and respond different ways when they are in therapy or really doing therapeutic activities. So the workbook gives you room to answer the questions that are in the book, the paperback here, but you also get more questions. And then at the end of the book, the workbook that is, I give resources that I refer clients to, national accredited, vetted resources for like a suicide hotline or just some people that need to talk and need somebody immediately. So I give you more results and some things that I've actually referred people to. So you have that as a reference. I hope that answers your question.
Way to go. Super excited. So thank you so much for sharing that part of the book, because I definitely think, and I will just say that that's something I see in my practice when I'm working with couples. I see the daddy issues arising between couples, and it's interesting because I will instantly text Christian and say, I need this book, like yesterday, because I need it. But yes, it definitely does rear its ugly head at times in a relationship, good or bad. Like Ari was saying earlier, even when you have a good relationship with your dad, you tend to hold men to that same standard and are unable to see them in a different light. You see dad sometimes, almost like you did with Mr. Tony.
I know. I love him so much. Love you, babe.
And I have had the honor of watching this relationship like grow and blossom, the good, bad, and ugly. I mean, we all have it. And I am just so proud of the two of you. I'm proud of the two beautiful boys that you have. And your new baby, your newest baby, daddy issues. Detangle from the sins of our fathers. So before we wrap today, Christian, we have a winner.
Yes.
And, so Joe, and then our new winner, Manuel Kell, I believe.
Oh, Kelly.
Yes. I will be hitting y'all up to negotiate the terms of sharing this bag. So,
I'll get you one, sis. I'm going to get you one.
You know what? That's more merch, okay? Anyway, so guys, if you have not already opened your additional window and gone to www.couchwithchristian.com to order a copy of Daddy Issues or the workbook, I want to know what you're waiting for. Go ahead and put that in the chat. Let us know what you're waiting on, because it is available now. Today is the day.
Let's get Let me tell y'all what's available now. So the book is available to order at my website, www.couchwithchristian.com. You can get the paperback book now. We're reserving it. That's going to ensure your reservation for the book. You can also reserve a reservation for the workbook, and I will be shipping those out with personal written letters and thank you notes to everyone because I am currently handling the shipping. So the books will be coming to you in the next like 2 or 3 weeks. So now you're reserving your copy, making sure you get that. It is also available on Amazon. I literally just got the email like 2 hours before the show. So it's so crazy that you've heard it here first. It's available on Amazon. That's dope. So if you want to go to Amazon, right now on Amazon, you can get the paperback book and the ebook. The workbook, I shared the cover earlier. I'm finalizing a couple of things. I want to make sure that it's tweaked just right. And just like I did for the paperback book, I want it in my hands because it's all well and good. You write a book and that's amazing, but I got to make sure I get a good product. So I got to hold it in my hands. You know, that's just a thing to do. So I'm excited, you guys. Please go visit couchwithchristian.com. You can follow me at couchwithchristian on Instagram and the same name right here on Facebook. If you have any questions or inquiries, you can email me at info@couchwithchristian.com, and I'd be happy to try to address them. And thank you guys so much for your support. I sold over 100 books in my pre-sales.
Congrats! I wish we had confetti cannons.
I know. That would be so dope. If this is a real party in person, I was going to pull out all the stops. But here we are.
Into a Christian Jackson four-way.
I know, right? It's going to be a whole thing. But I appreciate every person that is here tonight and everybody that supported. I really, really, really am so thankful for you guys. So thankful.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, stop by couchwithchristian.com and get your copy of Daddy Issues, How to Detangle from the Sins of Our Fathers, as well as that workbook. Thank you so much, guys. And hopefully we will do this again when Mommy Issues launches.
Yes, that's a thing. Thank you, guys.
Bye. I feel like we need music.
Oh, y'all have a good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.